It is such an honor to be with this amazing group of passionate, excited individuals speaking about AI today at this conference. We've heard from the previous speakers about the amazing potential that AI can unlock. And I think we all agree that AI can serve as such an incredible multiplier for so many different use cases. My sharing session today, though, touches on a slightly more sobering note. What is the opposite of a multiplier? What happens to people who are left behind and cannot benefit from the potential that AI brings? The result is an exponential loss. And my effort, together with numerous partners across the Southeast Asian region, to help address that loss. One thing I want you all to note is this story is going to be a deeply Southeast Asian story, but it applies across so many different low-resourced contexts. So think about your own fields, your own niches, your own languages or cultures where this might apply, because each of the steps I'll be going through are generalizable and can be applied across all of these. I'm going to start by giving you a quick overview of Southeast Asia for those of you who are new to the region. We have 11 different countries, over 650 people, and so many different languages. I mean, Singapore alone has 4 national languages: Malay, Chinese, Tamil, and English. And even across those 4, you can see the incredible differences in the performance of our top LLMs today. And when you multiply that across the complexity of 1,200 languages, you can imagine why we see these results. 3 out of 4 people across the region do not benefit from the transformative potential of AI. All right, I'm going to share with you 3 different segments that our project is currently focused on. But again, this is entirely generalizable beyond that. Since they're all going to be very personal stories, I've added these 3 numbers just to remind you of that scale that it applies across. First, imagine moving to a brand new country, limited financial resources. You're starting a new job. You're grappling with complex regulations in a language you completely do not understand. No social capital, very little support that you can rely on. We see this with the 25 million migrant workers across Southeast Asia today. Without AI, they have to struggle through this with limited support. I'll share a little bit more about how our project SEALD has been looking to tackle this. Next, agriculture. I mean, it can be difficult to imagine with Singapore and our gleaming skyscrapers, but agriculture happens to be one of the key sectors for our region. And we have 100 million small farmers who are grappling with climate change, pests, dealing with sometimes unscrupulous middlemen, and having to deal with the financial challenges that come with the global economy today. Without AI, they do not have access to this up-to-date information that could essentially transform their livelihoods. And then finally, for 200 million children across our region, without AI, in the best case scenario, say the child actually does have a teacher in their classroom, they are being left out of the opportunity to have a personalized tutor who can greatly accelerate their learning journey. And at worst, I personally have seen multiple classrooms where you have students from grades 1 to 10 all together being served by a single teacher. With AI, there's the potential to make up for this drastic lack of teacher resources that we see across Southeast Asia, and that's not being fully unlocked for now. It seems so strange, almost ludicrous, that I'm talking about this concept of being without AI at this conference today, SuperAI, when we're seeing about all the incredible things that AI can already do. So why? Let me take the example of one of my close colleagues I work with across the region. So in Southeast Asia, as I mentioned, there's so many different languages. And I'd say if you use one of our very common messaging platforms, such as WhatsApp or Line, you'll see there's a very clear distinction. For those who speak languages where there are Latin scripts, people rely a lot on text, keyboard. And LLMs are generally a lot more advanced there. For those with scripts that are non-Latin, however, you'll see everyone uses voice messages. And when you look at that voice being transcribed into text by even our leading AIs today, there's a big, big performance gap. And that is just at step one. Now think about the potential AI has with agentic workflows. If you aren't able to communicate with each other as humans and with AIs, all of those future steps are blocked. I'm going to delve a little bit into the why of this. We first started our journey on this a couple of years ago. And one of the first things that came across very, very clearly is the data asymmetry that creates this issue. When you look at the open web data, which essentially all large language models are trained on, over 99% of that is in English. Southeast Asian languages are a small, minute proportion of the remaining 1%. And even there, getting high quality, factual, grounded data is extremely difficult. You'll see a lot of advertising content, for example, or non-verified data that doesn't necessarily translate to the performance uplift that we require. We started off Project Sealed to address first this data challenge. And then very soon, we realized that was not enough. So we moved on from data, and I'll talk through some of the model training techniques that we've used, and then finally the use cases that we're exploring through to today. So if anyone has any applications that they'd like to explore, we'd love to connect with you after this. How do we balance these scales for Southeast Asia? And again, as I mentioned earlier, all of these are generalizable. So think of any low resource context. Number one, get that representative data. And I'll share a bit more about how you can do that. Number two, what are the model training techniques across from pre-training to post-training to fine-tuning that you can use to incorporate that data and see that performance uplift in real-world use cases? And third, contextualize validation. Nothing is any good if you can't evaluate how well you're doing and identify where the future gaps are. So first on data sets, we started off with actually engaging native speakers across the Southeast Asian languages in settings like the one pictured here. We found that text prompts, for example, were not as effective at truly capturing the cultural data we wanted. And to give you an example, right, if you show someone an image prompt instead of a night market, the way folks of native speakers of different languages describe that same image prompt is so much more nuanced than if you gave them a text prompt upfront that defines the market for them. We collected over 20,000 of these, both the audio as well as the transcribed versions. And I'll tell you why that became important later on. That was the beginning of the journey, and you'll see we have expanded massively since then through the help of community partners, governments, enterprises, universities, other like-minded organizations across all of those 11 Southeast Asian countries, all contributing to this effort for high-quality open-source data. Then we realized to make this data truly helpful, we wanted to put it in the hands of developers in the region who could build for their own use cases, to empower, to realize the differences that AI-based applications could make in these fields. If you could play the video for us, I'll show you a quick demo. And Aquarium is live on beta right now, so you can go check it out. What we wanted to do is make this as accessible as possible. So you'll see very clearly listed the specific context of each of these data sets, their open source license, how they can be used across pre-training, post-training, across the different domains as well. So for instance, if I'm looking for building data sets for a Thai healthcare use case, that's something I can very clearly do, not only in English, but also in my native language. And a huge thanks to all the partners listed here for helping us get to the beta launch of Aquarium. And would love your support in both accessing these data sets, contributing, and making them used in the real world. All right, moving on to the second scale, model training techniques. This calm method was developed by my colleagues at Google DeepMind to address the fundamental issue with fine-tuning. You have a centralized large general purpose model, Gemini for instance here. When you try and make a fine-tuned version of that specializing in a particular language, you see a lot of catastrophic forgetting. What does that mean? Say I'm adding a bunch of Indonesian data. A fine-tuned model often tends to forget some of those baseline summarization, reasoning, coding capabilities that were there in the general purpose model. It's also very expensive, and then you end up with multiple model copies, which is inefficient. Calm provides an alternative where through composition, you have a single model copy that retains much better the existing skills in the large language general purpose model. And you'll see, again, this is across various different fields, but with languages, and Southeast Asian languages in particular, we have really brought Calm forward to prove out some of these capabilities. There's a paper online, happy to point you to the technical details for anyone interested afterwards. And then finally on evaluation. When you do not have a sense of how well you're doing, it's very hard to direct further resources towards plugging those gaps. Everyone here must be familiar with LM Arena, where you can see the capabilities of our top models across different fields. For the longest time, it was very focused on English. Now we have Japanese, Korean, and Chinese added from our region, but no Southeast Asian language yet. That's what prompted us to work with our partners, AI Singapore, to create the C-Helm leaderboard, which you can access to understand the capabilities across Southeast Asian languages for the top models out today. We started with instruction following, proficiency in chat, and some linguistic tasks. And now we're further expanding it to look at, for example, longer context performance. I want to leave you with this note that truly acknowledges the only reason we've been able to make the progress so far. It is the partnerships that have sustained this effort and made it long-term. And this is an open invitation for any of you who operate out of the region and would like to contribute to reach out to us. And to further incentivize you, I'll give you a peek of what's next for our Project Sealed work group. Aquarium, as I mentioned, building that out, getting more adoption, getting more use cases, and multimodality. We are seeing a lot of very interesting use cases with interleaved text and image data. Audio, as I mentioned, is super critical, especially for a region where there may be certain contexts with limited and low literacy rates. Also looking at safety and value alignment, which is critical, not just in a general form, but taking into account local cultural contexts. And then, of course, growing our community across the region. I'd like to leave you with a few of the lessons we've learned through this journey with the hope that you can apply this as you continue in your own fields. On challenges, the #1 lesson was that data matters, and this getting to the right data is not trivial. We have worked with agencies where all the data exists, but it's all locked up in cabinets, it's in paper form. Getting that digitized and getting it truly used in LLMs today has definitely been a journey. And to facilitate that, we've had to build bridges across our partner community and understand the incentives and top priorities. Finally, what gets measured gets managed, and that has really been a key driver for our efforts around objective evaluation benchmarks that can guide us as a compass. On learning points, whenever there have been challenges in terms of the future direction of Project Sealed, community, recentering back to those users and use cases where this is truly making a difference, has helped us guide our next steps. Next, openness. All of these data sets are open sourced. All of the efforts across data collection, we've had playbooks. With Aquarium, we've gone one step further to have a single Southeast Asian platform that anyone can access. and similarly for the model training techniques and evaluation benchmarks. And finally, adapt. This is such a fast-moving space, and my hope today is with all your support, we can ensure that AI acts as a multiplier for as many people as possible across the region. Thank you.